Hi, I'm just going to do a little insert between videos. I know the one that I just posted, I was in the hospital, and that was August 13th. And aunt went into the hospital the day I was discharged. And when my daughter picked me up, we went to the assisted living, and I got into the ambulance while my daughter followed us. So if there were to be a detour, I could call her and have her change directions, but there wasn't. Everything worked out. And so, so my aunt went to the hospital. They ended up putting her in ICU. I think she was in there for, I'd have to look, but she was in there for a week. And then they put her into another room. And this is what's crazy about the medical system, I guess. They don't look at things as a whole or individually, or I mean, I'm not sure how they decide what they decide, because what ended up happening was my aunt went to the hospital because of the fluid on her lungs. They didn't have a bed. I mean, they were full, so they ended up putting her in ICU. Now, I learned something about hospitals, because there are hospitals that have what's called an open ICU, where the doctor can dictate whether a patient goes into ICU or not. And there are hospitals that have what's called a closed ICU, and the department deems whether or not that person should be there. So they have the right to say no, they don't constitute having an ICU bed. But at Beaumont, it's an open ICU, because the lady that was there told us she would have declined her had it been a closed ICU hospital. I thought that was interesting. It's like every time we go, we're learning new little things about hospitals and the medical profession, and I mean, no, they don't make sense, but so it's interesting. Because they didn't have any beds on, I guess, the floor of that. Alrighty then. Long video on nothingness. So, ice cold water. Oh, I love CVS water. I'm just posting this because the next video talks about how, I'm not sure if I deleted it or not, but anyway, the next video I'm at my sister's. We go for a ride and whatnot to look at water levels and stuff, but it had already receded, so we didn't really see a whole lot, but it was a nice ride. So, back to the hospital. When she was in ICU, she did finally, what happened was, when she was in ICU, they could not discharge her unless she went to a regular room. So until they could get a room available to transfer her to, she couldn't be discharged. Does that make sense? If she's dischargeable, does that really make sense? So racking up the bill, racking up the money, and all this other stuff because of the system. So our system is somewhat broken, and I'm seeing that more and more, and it just doesn't make sense to me anyway, why they do that. I mean, if the doctors say she's okay to go, and if everybody says she's okay to go, just because she's occupying an ICU bed, the insurance company says no. She has to be occupying a regular bed in order to be discharged. So you have to go through all this transferring of the patient to another room, and then because it's another room, then they have different doctors, different nurses on different floors. So then everybody has to look at her again. It doesn't make sense to me. And so when she did get into that room, finally they were going to discharge her. However, they declined the rehab, in-house rehab, or the I forget what it's called. It's when you go to a facility for rehab. I've heard my daughter say it, and I'll butcher it if I try to say it. And it's probably something really easy. But anyway, so then she was denied rehab, but she could get in-house rehab at the assisted living place. Now the doctors told us, and again, we get different information, and I guess this is what I want to portray to people. When you're dealing with elder care, try to know everything, keep records of everything. We keep copies of absolutely everything, and we often bring it with us. So if the doctors say anything, we can pull it out and say, here, this is what happened last time, or, whatever. But the doctors, the one caseworker said that what would happen is that she would go back to assisted living. Her lungs are going to fill up with water, fluid. Call the ambulance. She gets transferred back to the hospital. They drain her, send her home. And if I'm repeating myself, I apologize, but it just seems she goes to the hospital, they do what they have to do, and they send her home. She goes to the hospital to do it, and eventually it gets to the point where the hospital says, we can't do anymore. And I know I'm repeating myself. And then it's like, you have to make that decision as to whether or not, and the scary part, I guess, that I'm getting to is she loves Beaumont. And if we call EMS and she's in distress to take her to another hospital, she's not going to be happy. So what do? We can't take her in our car, really. I mean, she can't breathe, or she's having trouble breathing. I mean, really. So it's like, when do you stop? So anybody who has to deal with this kind of stuff, it's like, it sounds easy in my head. Before, it was like, okay, I had told my daughter, this is it, we're going to just go on to comfort care, that's it, we're done. But then when I was talking to that one caseworker, she goes, you do whatever makes her happy. And if it makes her happy to go to the hospital, then let her go to the hospital. And it might end up that she passes at the hospital. I don't think she wants to pass away at Grace. She finally has accepted that she is passing away. So she is starting to ask us to do things, last wishes type stuff. So there's a finality there, I guess. If I'm saying the right word, I don't know. But it seems almost unreal, if that makes sense. It's like, okay, we're going through the motions. We are trying to honor her wishes the best we can. And it's strange. I mean, it's, you know, and again, I have not been through this before. My, my mom passed when I was 17, and that's a whole nother story. Um, my father passed when I was young. A veterans nursing home kind of thing, and he had Alzheimer's, so he didn't even know who we were. So it was a relief when he passed because it was hard. I have a lot of editing to do. Anyway, I just wanted to throw this one in there because of the fact that she went to the hospital and then we had to tell her that she was no longer qualified. The insurance company was no longer going to approve her to go to the rehab that she liked. She was not happy at all, but I think it's really starting to set in. I don't think the rehab that comes to her really does her any good. The only nice thing is more people checking on her. We are trying to go there more often. I mean, somebody's there all the time, but we're trying to do it differently. I stopped going with my daughter so much so we could break it up. So she goes, I go, my sister goes. But it's a turn in your life, and I hope if anybody's watching this, it's hard. It's hard to go through it. It's hard when they start asking for those final, you know, I want you to find this so and so can get this, whatever. I want this when I get buried. And, you know, I don't like having to go through her items or her house to find things. And my daughter is not the worst. She's the most, it feels disrespectful in some ways. I mean, I don't know. And I know that once things happen, we got a whole huge job ahead of us. I mean, there's so much to it. It's not, I mean, the person dies and they're gone. Then what? Then you have the family just going through all of this. And I guess that's why I'm vlogging this, to go through the transition of, you know, when you are taking care of somebody and they're going downhill to the point of comfort care and to the point of having to do things afterwards. And I'll keep doing that. So I'm going to stop here because I have another video to upload. And then I think that's it. And then I'll be getting back on track. There's some, yeah, anyway, I won't go there either. I'm going to stop. I'm going to edit the crap out of this and try to get this posted so I can get the other one posted. So, alrighty, you all have a good day. Take care. See you later. Bye.